It was 3 a.m. on a freezing Portland night. Rain slashed sideways like knives. Inside a dimly lit garage, no heat, no glamour, no investors cheering, sat a man drowning in debt. Invoices piled higher than his hope. Banks had stopped returning his calls. His partner? Missing. His suppliers? Threatening lawsuits. And the company he'd bet his life on? It had 90 days to live. This is not the story of a victory lap. This is the story of a near-death experience. A story of two broke dreamers who stared into the abyss and dared the abyss to blink first. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the unbelievable, heart-pounding, tear-jerking rise of Nike. If you think you know this story, think again. Because what you're about to hear isn't just about shoes. It's about betrayal. It's about guts. It's about a logo drawn for $35 that would one day be worth more than entire countries. Stick around. Don't click away. This is business history, served with drama, emotion, and a side of pure adrenaline. Let's begin at the beginning. Picture this. It's 1962. John F. Kennedy is president. The Beatles haven't even hit America yet. And a 24-year-old MBA grad named Phil Knight is doing something absolutely insane. He's boarding a cargo ship to Japan with no contacts, no business license, no safety net, just a thesis paper and a gut feeling that would change the world. Phil wasn't your typical entrepreneur. He wasn't flashy, didn't drop out of Harvard, didn't code an app in his dorm. No, Phil Knight was an accountant. Quiet, introverted, wore glasses, ran track in college, not because he was fast, but because he hated losing. And now, he was risking everything on running shoes. Specifically, Japanese ones. See, Phil had written his Stanford MBA thesis on one simple idea. What if American athletes stopped buying expensive German shoes and switched to cheaper, better Japanese alternatives? Back then, Adidas and Puma ruled the track. Handmade, expensive, European prestige. But Phil, he saw weakness. He saw opportunity. And so, armed with $1,200 borrowed from his father, he flew to Kobe, Japan, walked into the headquarters of Onitsuka Tiger, now known as ASICS, and lied. Yes, you heard that right. He walked in pretending to be the head of an American distribution company called Blue Ribbon Sports. There was no company, no office, no employees. Just Phil and his fake business card. But here's the crazy part. It worked. The Japanese execs, impressed by his confidence, they gave him exclusive U.S. rights to distribute their shoes. No contract signed. Just a handshake and a dream. Phil flew home, opened the trunk of his Plymouth Valiant, laid out 300 pairs of Tiger running shoes, sold them out of his car at track meets, made $8,000 in year one. Profit? $1,000. Not exactly Shark Tank material. But it was a start. And for Phil, that was enough. He partnered with his old track coach, Bill Bowerman. Eccentric, obsessed, genius inventor. Bill didn't care about margins. He cared about milliseconds. He'd melt rubber in his wife's waffle iron to create better soles. He'd study footprints in mud to design the perfect arch. Together, they were oil and water. Phil, the numbers guy. Bill, the mad scientist. But together, they were unstoppable. By 1966, Blue Ribbon Sports opened its first real store. Tiny, dusty, tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. But inside,
Magic was brewing. Athletes started whispering, "These tigers? They're lighter, faster, better." Sales doubled.
Then tripled. Phil quit his accounting job. Bill kept tinkering. And for a few golden years, it felt easy. But in business, when things feel easy, it's usually the calm before the storm. Because behind the scenes, the Japanese weren't smiling. They were watching, waiting, planning. And soon, they'd pull the rug right out from under Phil Knight. It started with silence. Orders delayed. Calls unreturned. Shipments mysteriously canceled. Phil didn't panic at first. Supply chain hiccups, right? But then, he got the letter. Cold. Formal. Japanese corporate speak. Translation? Effective immediately. Blue Ribbon Sports is no longer our authorized distributor. They'd been cut off. After 8 years. After building their brand in America. After Phil poured his soul and his father's money into making Tiger shoes a household name among runners. Onitsuka just dropped them. Why? Simple. Greed. The Japanese saw how well the shoes were selling, saw Phil's growth, saw billions in potential, and decided, why split the pie when they could take the whole damn bakery? Worse, they didn't just cut ties. They tried to steal Blue Ribbon's customer list, hired private investigators, poached employees, even opened their own retail stores in the U.S., right across the street from Phil's shops. This wasn't business. This was war. And Phil? He was outgunned, outfunded, outlawyered. He had warehouses full of unsellable inventory, employees looking to him for answers, investors screaming for returns, and zero products to sell. He sat in his office one night, staring at a mountain of debt, and whispered to himself, "What have I done?" But Phil Knight, he didn't cry. He didn't quit. He got angry. And anger? That's when geniuses get dangerous. He called Bill Bowerman. 2 words. We rebuild. From scratch. New name. New brand. New shoes. New identity. They needed a logo. Fast. So Phil turned to a 26-year-old graphic design student at Portland State. Her name? Carolyn Davidson. He gave her a simple brief. Design something that implies motion, speed, grace. She came back with sketches. One stood out. A curved check mark. Like a wing. Like a whoosh. Like movement. Phil shrugged. I don't love it, but it'll grow on me. He paid her $35 for what would become the most valuable logo in sportswear history. They needed a name, too. Almost went with Dimension 6. Thank God they didn't. Then someone suggested Nike, Greek goddess of victory, pronounced Nike. Perfect. Short, mythological, powerful. And on May 30th, 1971, Nike Inc. was born. But here's the thing. Birth doesn't mean survival. In fact, their first year as Nike, they nearly died. Again. For what would become the most valuable logo in sportswear history. They needed a name, too. Almost went with Dimension 6. Thank God they didn't. Then someone suggested Nike,
Greek goddess of victory, pronounced Nike. Perfect. Short, mythological, powerful. And on May 30th, 1971, Nike Inc. was born. But here's the thing. Birth doesn't mean survival. In fact, their first year as Nike, they nearly died. Again.
It's 1972. Nike has launched. Shoes are being made. Ads are running. But cash? Nowhere to be found. Phil is juggling 27 different bank accounts just to keep checks from bouncing. He's flying commercial, sleeping in airports, eating gas station hot dogs. He's lying to suppliers, begging for extensions, writing IOUs like they're going out of style. And the banks? Laughing in his face. No collateral? No loan. One executive even told him, "Mr. Knight, you're running a hobby, not a business." Internally, chaos. Employees weren't getting paid on time. Some quit. Others stayed, out of loyalty or insanity. Phil's marriage strained to breaking point. His wife, Penny, working double shifts as a teacher just to keep food on the table. And Phil? He'd come home at midnight, kiss his sleeping kids, then sit at the kitchen table, staring at spreadsheets until sunrise. There's a moment, captured in his memoir, Shoe Dog, where he writes, "I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, smiling for the team, nodding in meetings, but inside, hollow, terrified. Every morning I woke up wondering, is today the day it all collapses?" And then, it almost did. October 1972. A letter arrives from First National Bank of Oregon. Final notice. Pay $1 million in outstanding loans, or we seize your assets. You have 90 days. 90 days. That's it. No extensions, no mercy. Phil gathers his team, looks them in the eye, and says, "We either make history or we become a footnote." What happened next? Pure desperation, pure genius. They sold shoes anywhere. High school gyms, car trunks, parking lots. They convinced retailers to pay up front. They begged factories to delay invoices. They maxed personal credit cards. And then they bet everything on one man, Steve Prefontaine. Rebellious, charismatic, America's fastest distance runner. Prefontaine didn't just wear Nikes, he bled for them. Literally. He'd race with bloody blisters and still win. He became their mascot, their warrior, their voice. And America fell in love. Sales exploded. Just in time. On day 87, Phil wired the final payment to the bank, saved the company, collapsed on his office floor, and cried. Not from joy, from exhaustion, from fear finally releasing its grip. Nike lived. But surviving? That was just step one. Now, they had to fight the giants, Adidas. And what followed? The greatest David versus Goliath battle in sports history. By 1976, Nike was breathing, but barely. Adidas, dominating. Worldwide sales, $700 million. Nike, $14 million. They were ants trying to topple a skyscraper. Adidas didn't see Nike as competition. They saw them as pests. Until the 1976 Montreal Olympics. That's when everything changed.
Steve Prefontaine? Dead. Car crash. Age 24. America mourned. Nike? Devastated. Their hero, their voice, gone. But grief, it fuels revolutions. Phil took Prefontaine's death and turned it into a movement. Pre-lives t-shirts, memorial races, scholarships. Nike became more than shoes. It became tribute. It became legacy. And then they struck gold. University of North Carolina. Freshman phenom, Michael Jordan. No, wait, let me correct that. God Michael Jordan. Nike scouts saw him play once. One game. And knew, this kid, he wasn't just good. He was generational. Problem? Jordan hated Nike. Preferred Adidas. Thought Nike was too ugly. Phil didn't care. He flew to North Carolina, sat Jordan down, and said, "We'll build a shoe just for you." Jordan laughed. "You don't even make basketball shoes." Phil smiled. "We do now." They designed the Air Jordan 1. Red and black. Bold. Illegal, according to NBA rules. Uniform violation. Nike paid Jordan's fines. Turned the ban into a marketing stunt. Banned commercials. Rebellion sells. And sell? It did.
$100 million in sales, year one. Unheard of. Adidas panicked, started copying, lowered prices, signed rival stars. But it was too late. The throne had been stolen. Nike wasn't just winning. They were rewriting the rules. Endorsements weren't about athletes anymore. They were about icons, about culture, about identity. And Nike? They owned it. But even kings have weaknesses. And Nike's was about to explode in front of the entire world. It was the 1990s. Nike? Invincible. Air Jordans? Selling out in minutes. Just Do It ads? Cultural anthems. But behind the gloss? Darkness. Reports surfaced. Children sewing shoes in Indonesian sweatshops. Workers earning 23 cents an hour. Forced overtime. Abuse. Protests erupted. Campus boycotts. Celebrities dropped Diane. Even Michael Jordan stayed silent. Headlines screamed, Nike equals modern slavery. Phil Knight? Stunned. He hadn't known. Or hadn't wanted to. Either way, the damage was nuclear. Stock plummeted. Brand value in free fall. For the first time, Nike wasn't the hero. They were the villain. Phil could have lawyered up, could have blamed contractors, could have hid. Instead, he did something shocking. He flew to Indonesia, walked into factories, met workers face to face, listened. Then, he did the unthinkable. He invited human rights groups to audit Nike's supply chain. Publicly, transparently, radically. He raised wages, improved conditions, published factory lists, created the Fair Labor Association. It cost hundreds of millions. Investors screamed, board members resigned. But Phil? He didn't care. He said, if we lose our soul to profit, we've already lost. Slowly, the tide turned. Activists became allies. Consumers returned. Nike didn't just recover. They set the standard. Today, their sustainability reports are studied in MBA programs. Their labor reforms, copied globally.
But none of that would have mattered if they hadn't nailed the one thing that saved them: marketing. 1988. America was tired. Recession looming, Cold War fears. People needed inspiration. Nike needed a reset. Whedon and Kennedy. Tiny ad agency. Big ideas. Their pitch? 3 words. Just do it. Originally inspired by the last words of a convicted murderer, but transformed into a battle cry. For athletes? Yes.
But also for single moms, for cancer survivors, for kids in broken homes, for anyone who refused to quit. The first ad? Walt Stack, 80-year-old runner, bearded, grinning, jogging across Golden Gate Bridge. People ask me how I keep my teeth from chattering in the wintertime. He winks. I leave them in my locker. Then, boom, just do it. Overnight, cultural earthquake. Sales jumped 100%. Within a decade, "Just do it" became the most recognized slogan in advertising history. Bigger than "I'm loving it." Bigger than "Think different." Why? Because it wasn't about shoes. It was about you. Your fight. Your hustle. Your comeback. Nike stopped selling product. They sold purpose. And the world bought it. By the billions. From $800 million in 1988 to $9 billion by 1997. All on 3 words and one belief. Great brands don't shout. They whisper directly to your soul. Today, Nike is worth over $200 billion. More than McDonald's, more than Disney, more than Boeing. Phil Knight? Retired. Worth $40 billion. But still shows up to HQ, unannounced, just to watch. He walks past the lobby statue of Steve Prefontaine, past the wall of Air Jordans, past the "Just Do It" neon sign, and smiles. Not because of the money, but because of the mission. Every kid tying their first pair of Nikes, that's victory. Every woman running her first marathon in Nike gear, that's legacy. Every rebel, misfit dreamer who chose the swoosh because it meant "I'm not backing down," that's why it all began. Nike isn't perfect. They've stumbled. Scandals. Controversies. Lawsuits. But they've always gotten back up. Because that's what Nike means. Not perfection. Not invincibility. Resilience. Grit. The refusal to stay down. And that's why they've outlasted empires, out-innovated giants, out-marketed legends. They didn't just build a brand. They built a belief system. And as long as there are dreamers, as long as there are fighters, as long as there are people willing to lace up and chase something impossible, Nike will never stop running. So, what's next? Well, if you thought this story was wild, wait until you hear about the little soda that survived wars, lawsuits, spies, cocaine formulas, and global boycotts, and still became the most consumed product on Earth. That's right. Next week, we're diving into the secret, scandalous, thrilling story of Coca-Cola. How a failed headache tonic became a global addiction. How they dodged prohibition. How they infiltrated Nazi Germany. And how one man's obsession with bottling rights made him richer than Rockefeller. Trust me, you've never heard this version. So, if you haven't subscribed, do it now. Hit that bell. Leave a comment with your favorite Nike memory. Was it your first pair of Dunks?
The Jordan buzzer beater? The Colin Kaepernick ad that divided a nation? Let us know. Because this channel, it's not just about business. It's about legends, underdogs, comebacks, and the humans crazy enough to bet everything on a dream. Until next time, keep running, keep fighting, and whatever you do, just do it.